Hey there, Tia, aka Everyday Monet, and in this new series called You Can, I'm going to really break down everything that I know about very specific parts of makeup application, tips and tricks, and all of that jazz. I hope you really enjoy it. In this video, we're going to be talking all about foundation with a little bit of color correction thrown in there. I hope you enjoy it. See you next time. Bye.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, the first step in foundation is going to be primer. Now, primer is not necessary. You do not have to use primer. I like to use primer. I have oily skin, so I do feel like primer helps me out. I have two options here. From the drugstore, I have tried a million of these ELF primers, and I really love them. I think they work great. I use a pore minimizer, and this is like the tone adjusting. So like whatever you feel like would work for you or that you need is good. Today we're going to use, me. Today I'm going to use the First Aid Beauty Coconut Skin Smoothing Primer Moisturizer. I really love this. This is just like the trial size that you get from Sephora. I really love this because if you don't want to use like moisturizer and primer and this and that, it really cuts a step out. I am a longtime user of this First Aid Beauty brand, and I definitely will continue to use it. So we're going to use a little bit of primer. You can use a brush if you want to. I don't have a problem putting stuff on with my fingers. I wash my hands, so they're fine. So you just rub that in. And I do feel like I have very dry under eyes, and so that is something that you do want to use a little bit of extra moisturizer if you have sort of like a dry under eyes. I haven't been sleeping, so this is why my dark circles are that bad, but this is not a necessary step. Because I have dark circles, before I put my foundation on, I'm going to go ahead and color correct. My favorite color corrector is the LA Girl Pro Conceal High Definition Concealer in the shade Peach Corrector. One of my tips for color correcting is to make sure you only correct where it's needed. Going all ham and getting all over is actually not going to help the problem. It's going to make it look worse. That's why I really like this brush, because then I can put it right where it's needed. And my dark circles are not the same, so my under eye correcting is not going to look the same. So I'm going to go in and use this little this is a Real Technique sponge. It's meant for color correcting, but I mean, it's just a sponge. So I really love the Real Technique sponges. So what you want to do is you want to dab in. You do not want to make this go away. So you want to blend it in, but you don't want to blend it away, or it won't color correct. Okay, so I've color corrected. There's no necessarily like rules for putting on foundation. Sometimes people will go in and put concealer on and then their foundation. I actually like to do it the other way around so that I can use the least amount of product as necessary. I tend to use some pretty full coverage foundation, so I don't find it necessary to really conceal that much. So I would rather just put the foundation on, see what can be seen, and then work from there. I put my foundation on with either a sponge or a brush. It depends on what my mood is, what kind of coverage I want. Sometimes I'll actually go in, especially with this stippling brush. This one's from Real Techniques. Because you can see these white bristles are a little bit less dense than these bristles, these black bristles down here. And so I feel like you can, apply product, not get too much on, and then you can go in and blend with a sponge. So that's the technique we're going to use today. Again, you do not need to use both. I'm trying out a new foundation today. I'm trying out a drugstore foundation. I tend to use only high-end foundations. I'm really trying to branch out and, you know, again, if I can find a really good $8 foundation as opposed to my like $34 foundations, I'm all for it. So this is a new foundation out. This is the LA Girl Pro Matte High Definition Longwear Matte Foundation. Now I have the other LA Girl. It's not specifically matte, and I like a matte foundation. I'm going to do a whole video on the different finishes of foundation and what you might want or don't want, but that's not this video. This video, we're talking about application of it. You can figure out which type later on. You know, you can apply your foundation on the brush. I like to apply them on the back of my hand. You could also use a palette. I do have this plastic palette that I use sometimes. I use a palette more if I have to mix several shades together. But I tested this on my hand, and if you can see, I've rubbed it in, and I feel like it's actually a pretty good match. So I'm just going to go ahead and put one. I didn't even do like a full-on pump. I'm going to put that much on my hand. And like I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to use this stippling brush, and I'm just going to dip the tips of this brush into the foundation. Now I'm not using up everything I have on my hand. And what I like to do is I like to just do this, and then that way I don't get a heavy concentration of foundation in one place. You do actually, you can actually favor one side to the other if you start like ham on one side. If that's the normal side you tend to put more foundation on one side or the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start blending in with this brush, and then if I want to or need to, I will go in with the sponge. I like to use these buffing circles. I find that it just really applies the foundation well and a little bit more evenly. Not everybody puts foundation on their eyelid. I just do that. It's just a preference of mine. Now I'm gonna dampen. I'm going to take my Real Technique sponge and I'm going to get it damp, not wet, just damp. Okay, so I have my sponge, it's dampened, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of blend in this foundation. And I'm noticing on first application that it's not super full coverage. I think it's buildable. What does it say? It says this is medium to full coverage. So what that really means is that you can build it up, and building it up means that you are just going to be, you know, adding additional layers until it looks medium to full coverage. Because I've never used this before, I didn't want to go in ham, because a lot of times if something can be full coverage, I tend to use just way too much. So you can see, I like the finish. It's definitely a matte finish. But I can definitely see areas, so we need to build this up. So to build it up, instead of using the stippling brush, I'm going to go in with one more pump, and I'm just going to take my sponge, take the tip of my sponge, and I'm just going to work in the areas where I feel I need more coverage. And then what I like to do is just do these sort of dabby, bouncy motions, and we're just going to move the product around. Oh yeah, that is definitely taking it to full coverage. So I'm going to finish by doing this full half of my face, so you can see the difference between putting just like one little pump, one stippling brush. And stippling brushes do put on less product, just due to the design. So you can see the difference between how it can be sort of built up to a full coverage and be more like a light to medium on this side. So this is the full coverage side, and then this is that light to medium. So here you can see a lot of my redness around my nose, some of the scarring that I have here on my face, discoloration here. Yeah, that's covered up pretty good on this side. So I'm just going to finish up with the sponge on the other side. And keep in mind, you're not going to do as much blending as I'm doing if you don't have areas to cover up. So if your skin is fairly clear, this process isn't going to take you as long. And I'm super particular too, so that's part of that. Okay, I really like how the finish is. There's a few areas. This is what happens when you like dig at your face and like you can't let acne go for a second. You tend to get those. But I'll be using a finishing powder, so I think it's going to cover up any other discoloration. I'm actually not going to go ahead and use concealer. You could go in and just spot conceal in these places, but for me, that's not really that big of a deal. All right, so our foundation is on. The last thing that we do for a flawless foundation application, super easy. So we color correct it if we needed to, and you can then conceal at that point if you needed to. Then you're going to put on your foundation. You build it up to however you particularly like it. And the last thing that you do is you set that foundation. So setting the foundation with a powder just like sort of locks it in. Depending on the powder that you use, you can get a little bit of additional coverage in certain areas. I'm actually going to try out this LA Girl Pro Face High Definition Matte Pressed Powder to finish things off. And I'm going to use a Real Techniques, I think this is the buffing, yeah, the buffing brush. So I'm going to swirl it in here, and then I'm just going to buff it all over my face. I'm concentrating a little bit more in just those few areas where I could have concealed with concealer, but I chose not to. This I'm really not going to cover up too much because it's pretty dark. It'll fade, but like, just don't pick your face. I mean, and it's like so gross, but I can't help it sometimes. As I'm getting older though, I'm realizing when I do that, the hyperpigmentation is getting really bad and it's taking weeks upon weeks to fade, whereas when I was a little bit younger, my skin and hormones were different. It didn't do that. So I'm really liking this, how this is done. The one last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little more concealer underneath the eyes. And I know that some people had commented about me putting concealer over powder. For some people that will definitely crease. I have not really had that problem. If you feel like potentially putting concealer over a powder, like a liquid concealer over a powder, if you do it and you try it and it creases on you, then just reverse. Just when you're doing your, instead of the color correcting, just do the concealer under there. I'm going to use my Shape Tape. I got a new shade. I got the shade Light and Medium in my Shape Tape. Usually under the eyes, I use the Light Neutral. I'll show you the difference in the shade. So this here is the Light Neutral, and then this here is the Light Medium. I'm trying some different things with my under eyes. So although I want to brighten, I'm trying to get a little bit closer to my natural skin tone. And it's an experiment, so I will get back to you as to what I think and why I chose to do that. So I'm just going to take my Shape Tape. Oh my gosh, my cat is snoring. I don't know if you can hear her or not. The Shape Tape is very full coverage. It's very thick, okay? So you have to, like, don't go ham with this. And I'm going to take this Real Techniques sponge. You can get these wherever they sell Real Techniques. They always come in like a 2-pack. I always start closest to the inner part of my eye and then work out. And when I work out, I'm trying not to bring my concealer down. Like you'll see a lot of times people are doing concealer in this V. That's not bad. As you get older though, it really does accentuate some of the challenges you have on the under eyes. So I'm, again, trying some new techniques. So this is one where I'm trying not to bring it down. And then when I bring it up, I like to blend it so that it brings the eye up. I like that. I don't think it looks bad. I mean, I have dark circles and I'm going to put the rest of my face on. You're not going to necessarily see, and I'll do my powder. I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to go in with the light neutral and just do a tiny bit. I'm just going to go ahead and do one here and one here and blend that out. And then I'll be done. I'm just blending in so I don't get that V. And definitely with this new technique, I think I like just the first shade on its own. I do feel like if you see in here with that lighter shade, it's almost making it, the dark circles, worse than it was before. So you're seeing on camera my experiment. I'm actually just going to, like, you should never use this much Shape Tape. If you're not used to doing a lot of concealing and fixing, don't use this much Shape Tape. But I'm just on camera trying to show you a little bit of the difference when you get closer to your skin tone as you, and I say as you get older, I mean, I'm just saying that because that's my experience and that's where I'm at in my life. I'm older. No shade to myself, just saying. I have to switch up some of my techniques so that I still feel like it looks nice as my skin and my face changes a bit. Yes, that's better. Okay, so that's what I have for you in terms of foundation. I think it turned out really nicely. I like the finish. And if you have any questions, I am going to be uploading a bunch of other videos in this You Can series. You can apply foundation. I know you can. I hope I gave you enough direction. Please check out my other videos, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. I'd love to have you as my little Monet. I will see you in my next video. Bye.